Oh my God, we're finally here, Aly. We're here for the finale of Ascendance, which just aired, right? Similar to Survivor. This just aired. We're talking about it now. It's fresh. No, I know, we're very behind, just like we have been with Survivor. I'm going to say the same thing I did then. When we met up, this just was not a priority in that way. And yeah, that's really all I'm going to say, but we're here to finally talk about the finale. Of course, I'm here with my lovely and beautiful co-host, Aly. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I got my booster shot today, so my arm's a little sore, but I'm okay.
And you're in a new setting.
Yes, I'm in my new bedroom. I'm back with my mom and stepdad at their new place.
It looks very good. But before we do get into this, we are going to go ahead and introduce our co-hosts for the last time, at least for this season. I don't know if we're going to be continuing coverage moving forward. We're not sure yet. But we are going to go ahead and introduce this first person who I'm pretty sure is the winner of the draft. Don't quote me on that, but they did finally finish putting it together. And I think we have accumulated all of the points, and I think we have crowned the winner of the draft here. So here they are, Sean Dairo.
Hello. I hope my math is right.
Yeah, I think you did. Listen, we put a lot of trust in you because you understand how to do that stuff a lot better than me. So like I'm sure you did that right.
I calculated that 3 times, so let's hope it's correct.
Yes, definitely. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. Always, it's been great to have you on the entire season. And yeah, but we're going to introduce our, of course, other co-hosts here once again. He did not win the draft. He thought he won the draft at first, but unfortunately he did not. He lost by a couple points, but he is here and we always enjoy his insights. The wonderful Mike.
This is not how I asked to be introduced.
I forgot how you wanted to be introduced.
Fine, I'll introduce myself. Hi, I just voted myself out of Ascend the Chaos.
Amazing.
Good job.
But yeah, we're going to go ahead. So we have 2 episodes technically to talk about. We're not really going to talk about the first one that much because it really was just a series of competitions. So we don't really have a ton to talk about with that one. We're mainly going to talk about the finale here. But before we do get into that, how do we feel about this endgame overall? Are you satisfied? Did you like the way it wrapped up? What do you guys think?
For me, like, it was interesting because, like, you know, the final 3 were all Ascendance alums, and just to see how much like redemption each person had. Like, you know, Edmund had the redemption of keeping his title winner. Peyton trying to keep that, you know, trying to win and take, you know, not be second anymore. And then you got Stephanie, who, you know, cured her 7th place curse, but also like she has worked her ass off in the org series, and watching her play the game, like she really wants to win, and like I think all 3 deserve like that recognition that they, you know, worked their ass off. So it was a satisfying ending.
Yeah, I think so too. I think they all had really interesting stories, and it was really great to see that really come to the forefront here. But like I said, we are going to start off with discussing episode 13. So as we remember in the last episode, there was a tie between Stephanie and Michelle. That's how it wrapped up. The tie is not broken, and it does, of course, go to a fire-making or face-off challenge. We see Stephanie and Michelle have to then compete a Tetris board of sorts. And after a few minutes, Stephanie pretty much just completes the board in a very clean sweep, making Michelle the 8th member of the jury, and me losing my last person in the draft. So I effectively lost, as I already expected to. I drafted 3 pre-jury. So yeah, that's how I feel about that. Mike, I'm sorry. You wanted to give your take on the finale overall?
Yeah, I did. I mainly wanted to piggyback off of what Sean just said about how the final 3 was all Ascendance alum. Not only that, you've also got, it's all old school Ascendance alum, and it's one from season 1, one from season 2, one from season 3. And I thought that was interesting as well. But I also want to mention, as you just said, Michelle eliminated in 4th place. As a non-alumni, to get that far with so many alumni on that cast, I found it impressive. I really did.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I think Michelle's game was honestly really overlooked throughout a good majority of the season. I think there were a lot of points where, you know, she definitely could have gone out if she did not have the amazing social skills that she really did. Like, she is a really great social player. She had those close connections with Erica. She found other people that she got pretty close with, and I think it put her in a really good position to the point where Michelle honestly could have won the game if they let her get a little bit further. So I do think Michelle was in a really strong position. Did she have as flashy games as some of them? No, but I don't really think that matters at the end of the day, because I think she had such a strong social game and such a good grasp of the game overall. And for a first timer, I think it's very impressive. So I really liked her in this game. I definitely want to see her play more games, you know, within the org community or whatever she really has planned. I really enjoyed seeing her play here a lot. So I definitely do not regret drafting her. If anything, I am happy that I drafted her, because as the season went on, you know, was more and more impressed by her. So yeah, I was very happy with how Michelle played here. So she does talk about, though, how it's devastating to go out here, but she's still very proud of herself, happy she was able to get where she was, especially as the only Black person in the game, which is you know, incredible as well. The representation and things like that. You know, she did a really great job all around. Just a really, really strong player, I think. What do you guys want to say about Michelle's game? Because unfortunately, she's not able to get here for an interview. She is going through some health issues, and we wish her the best because of that. But what do you guys want to say about Michelle?
Well, first thing, I obviously hope she's doing okay.
Yes.
And really the main thing is just, like, I thought her game was kind of underrated. She actually, like, really proved me wrong as a game player, and I thought she did, like, really well. Like,
what do you mean she proved you wrong as a game player?
Oh no, just like
what? Like, what? I'm gonna be honest. What do you mean by that?
Like,
I think what she means is that there were weeks early on where we thought Michelle is not getting very far, and she kept getting farther.
But I mean, she did really well. She got 4th, so she definitely, like, did really well socially and strategically, and just it just came down to that one comp, so which was really, like, tight. So, and it sucked when it was between 2 women.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree. Backing off what Aly said, like, her social game, honestly, like, probably was the cleanest of every single person out of that game.
Yes.
She literally was targeted since the jury started, but she had her social connections keeping her. Like, you had Mark who tried getting her out, but she had her social connections. You know, she was well bonded with every single person in the jury, and the reason, and she should be proud of herself, because she did not leave the game by getting voted out. She left the game because of her own accord. She left the game because she obviously didn't compete, or she didn't complete the puzzle. So, like, I think that's a better way of leaving the game than finding out that I got voted out on a majority vote. So yeah, I'm proud of her game.
Definitely. So yeah, really, really strong game overall. I think Michelle was someone that a lot of people, like I said, kind of overlooked because she isn't one of the bigger names, but she really did prove how good, you know, a newbie can do in this kind of environment. I think she really did kill it overall, especially not knowing really anyone going into this. Just really impressive all around. So yeah, that's basically everything going on with that. The rest of this is pretty much comps. Aly's going to talk about what happens in part 1. So go ahead.
All right. Well, Peyton talks about how now the plan is simple. One of him or Eddie needs to win, and they will make Stephanie 3rd, which makes me so sad.
I was really hoping that she'd throw a curveball into things and that she'd end up winning one of these parts, because that would have been really cool.
She needs her win.
Yeah.
And then whoever wins part 3 will make the sole decision on who to eliminate. The first part is a trivia comp based on everyone who has left. Edmund is confident he has this on lock, while Peyton isn't at all. But then Edmund does end up winning part 1.
Yeah, he really like beasted through that, and he did a really good job with that comp. But we get to the next challenge, which was a live version of the Tower of Hanoi, which I thought was really interesting the way they put that together. We played Tower of Hanoi plenty of times, but playing
it's giving
real life,
it's giving flashbacks.
Yeah, definitely. I mean,
I
can't
I'm
imagine
getting more flashbacks.
Yeah, I can't imagine how much worse it is having to do that in real life. But
shout out to Erica for beating me. It's
Kevin, it's literally the same strategy.
I mean, in a way, but it's a little bit different because you can't, you don't have the luxury of clicking and things like that. It takes a little bit
you
more
have an advantage because you can move the pieces yourself physically.
Yeah, that's true. But Peyton does win part 2. We get to part 3, which is basically just the classic jury questioning comp. Everyone, they have to try to figure out who managed the jury the best, what they're going to say. And episode 13 ends before we know who has won the comp. But now we're going to get into the finale here. So they're first asked about Michelle's most exciting moment, which is either when she won captain or chose a co-captain. The correct answer is King, and Peyton does end up winning the final parts of the final captain's challenge here. Pretty much after this, Stephanie knows her game is pretty much over. There isn't really much that she can do because Peyton is pretty much guaranteed to take Eddie to the end, and he does in fact end up doing that. And Stephanie's pretty pissed about this.
I do want to weigh in here again. As much as we love to see Stephanie win, Stephanie getting the final 2. Unfortunately for both Peyton and Eddie, who were competing in part 3, their only option was to take each other, if you really think about it, because their jury management has not been the greatest.
No, and that's
those two were in a position where they had to take each other.
And that's what I was nervous about with Peyton, because as someone who watched Peyton's game, season 1 of Ascendance, not live, the org series, he basically kind of played the same game he did in that season, but more his social game has upped up, his strategical game, comp wins better in the live version. But that's what I was nervous about, jury management, because he literally up against Duke, I thought Peyton had to win, but majority of it was jury management, and I was really nervous about that with Peyton. I was like,
Yeah, and that's something we have definitely talked about all season, is that as good as Peyton and Eddie have been in terms of their game, their jury management has been kind of horrendous, and that's something that is really highlighted throughout this finale quite a bit. I do really feel bad for Steph here, because I do think she played a really great game, definitely played a winning game. Again, I think, like Mike said, it really just came down to the fact that these two needed to take each other if they want to have even a chance of potentially getting that win. So basically, she does talk about how the game was and how exhausting it was physically, mentally, and emotionally. She wishes she did a couple things differently, but ultimately knew she had to win at the end. And that's where she felt she played an honest and social game, was able to do that, but is proud that she made it past her usual 7th place. She made it to 3rd because she would have beaten both of them, which is true. I think definitely it would have been a clean sweep if Stephanie was against either of them here. So Edmund feels this time around he can prove to people he isn't an easy beat and win a different way. Again, it really does suck to lose Stephanie at 3rd. I think that she played a really incredible game. I know we've talked about many times throughout the season how we thought that she definitely could have been one of the clear winners of this season. I think it really just, again, came down to the fact that Edmund and Peyton did recognize that we have to take each other. We both have very similar jury management, which is pretty piss poor, and we need to just own up to that and see who did it better, and I think that's something that they did recognize very well. I don't think they always had the best reads in terms of the jury, but I do think they had best reads in terms of their overall management. They definitely recognize our management was left a lot to be desired.
Yeah.
So It sucks to lose Stephanie here because, like I said, I do think she played a really strong game, and it's definitely the kind of game that I usually feel does get rewarded in the end. It just really comes down to who also is at the end.
I'm just so happy I picked her because obviously I feel like I know. But I'm really proud of her. She got past 7th place, and she's not just as a player, like she's one of the best players in this community, I think. But I love her as a person too, because like we are friends and everything. And she's just amazing, and she should just be really proud she got 3rd, because I mean she obviously could have won. She was one of the best players of the season. But yeah, like you guys said, they had to take each other. But
all right. Yeah. So Edmund did mention that he played like a different game from Rise of Rome. I'm gonna be honest, I don't know Edmund's like game from Rise of Rome, and based on conversations I've had with a certain player from that season, neither does she.
Who could that possibly be? Who played that season? I don't know.
Who forgot her own winner?
Way early.
Yeah, I didn't really get to talk to them much or at all.
Yeah, who forgot her own winner?
Yeah, that season was interesting.
I think Edmund did play a different game. Only because I think in season 2, from what I remember, he wasn't winning comps. He was basing it off social strategy that entire season, and I think he stepped it up with Ascendance Live, and honestly, like, that's growth. I mean, yes, he's won both times, but I think it's growth when it comes to his own gameplay, because season 2 to Ascendance Live, like, yes, jury management wasn't there, but his entire gameplay has changed, has shifted to a better, to a better player. And
so would you say his gameplay in Rise of Rome was better, or his Ascendance Live game was better? As somebody who knows both of those.
I'd say in an online community, it's different, only because you're. I think orgs is hard to play, because whereas in a live game you're able to sneak up on people. You can sneak on, like, if they're having conversations, you can go behind the door and listen to conversations. Like we see on Big Brother. But through like the orgs, like, you can't just hack into someone's computer, and get away with it.
Okay. You want to bet? Is that a challenge?
I'd say it's two different. Like, he has his perks.
I am kidding.
I think he has his perks with Rise of Rome and perks with Ascendance Live.
That's definitely a very valid.
It's also a hard choice. He won. Spoiler alert. he did win both seasons, so like
we'll get into that. But we then get like probably probably the longest segment of the entire finale, which was the jury roundtable that we're given here.
It was so long.
Yeah, it was very long. There was a lot that they ended up going over, and Aly, you're going to be covering pretty much all of it. So
good luck.
All right. Well, Nicole goes ahead and hosts a bit of a roundtable. She asks them how surprised they are by who is sitting in the final 2, which they aren't, but almost all raise their hand when saying how they're here as a result of Peyton and Edmund.
I think that alone really highlights like how similar their games were. They did play very similar games. I just think one had a little bit better socially than the other. And I think that's honestly what it does come down to.
They are asked what Peyton did to get himself here, but what will also hurt him in the end. Stephanie feels his lying both helped and hurt his game, but also can be attested to Edmund's game, which has pissed her off a lot, especially with how they lie who they voted for and took shot at her allies. Overall, she doesn't have much that is positive to say about either of them.
Yeah, she was pissed.
So mad. I'm just gonna say, like, from watching, her and Destiny were the most vocal.
Yeah, they really
Her
were.
and
They
Destiny
really
were the
were.
most vocal. I think it was really funny. Just like I honestly during that whole round table, my eyes were only focused on Destiny's face and Stephanie's face while Peyton and Edmund were talking because literally their facial expressions was entertainment.
Oh yeah.
Like, and then everyone else has just like a blank face. Like,
so funny.
And you got Destiny like, huh? And then you got Stephanie almost falling off her seat laughing because she knows what the truth is, you know. So that was entertaining to watch.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Mark credits them for outlasting everyone, even though they all knew their prior placements and how big of a threat they were, which Destiny also brings up how much everyone knew they were both running the game, which is on them and not the final two, and by the time they could try it, it was nearly impossible.
Which is true. I mean, there were so many times where people are like, yeah, Peyton's running the game, we got to get him out, and didn't do it.
They all agree they felt close with Eddie and had final 2 and 3 deals with him, which vastly outnumbers Peyton.
Yeah, he did not do that a lot.
Which also like kind of hurts his game because like
definitely
you promise these like final 2s with people and then you end up cutting them. Like again, goes back to jury management. These two did not do well with jury management, but I think if you word your words correctly when talking to the jury, I think that can be salvaged.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, like at first watching, I was like, "Oh, I don't think Edmund's winning."
Yeah, I actually didn't either. Like it was very much one of those finales where for a while it's like Peyton could win, no Eddie's gonna win, no Peyton's gonna win. Like it was like a back and forth, you know. Like I really struggled for a while. It really came down to those final votes, but of course we'll get into what I ultimately think gave the latter the win.
Stephanie brings up how she wasn't in either pockets and only ended up there because of the placement. And Erica calls her out on this since they had majority and could have gone for him at any point. But Stephanie says she had to keep Peyton in her good graces, so she didn't target Erica and had nothing to do with her going.
Yeah, which is true. And I think that's definitely something that Stephanie could have brought up at the end is like, I wasn't working that closely with like Peyton and Edmund. I just kind of got here because nobody wanted to go for me because of this, and this. And I think that makes her game even more like impressive in that way. So again, it does kind of suck that she wasn't able to talk about that at the end.
Yeah. Jeff feels their games were almost exactly the same. Sarah feels Edmund's game is more impressive with how manipulative he was with the multiple final 2 deals with almost the entire jury.
Because it's very similar to what Sarah was trying to do.
Right? Destiny agrees Addie's game was basically emotional manipulation and making everyone feel they had to do something. Peyton's game was a lot more straightforward in contrast. And Michelle feels Addie was someone who didn't try to save her while Peyton did.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Me too. Nicole asks how Peyton or Edmund elevated their social strategic game, and Destiny brings up how they would often push a fake agenda to distract from the actual plan, and whoever called them on it went out very early. She also believes the majority of their fights were fake and that they set themselves up well enough that they didn't have to elevate anything and plan it all together.
Which, from what I understand, that's not true. Their fights were very much real, which is interesting to me because I would have thought they were fake, but I guess not.
Me too. That's what I thought.
It's also like the perception. I mean, like the jury's perception, because everyone's around the corner and in and about, and like literally, was Peyton and Edmund have this final 2, and that they're not gonna cut each other. To like that was the perception. So that perception of knowing that they're a final 2 going into like their arguments, I can see why they think it's fake because of that perception.
Yeah.
Definitely. But I thought it was fake because obviously I'm like these two, like their connection is strong. Like this cannot be real. And then when I found out it was, I was like, oh well, cool.
Yeah, no, same. Like if if Papa and Nicole had not said that, like, yeah, that was a real fight, I would still think it was fake, because just those two were so close to each other, never really wavered. Like, I would have thought it was like just something they did kind of just like to steer away from like the actual, the actual drama.
Yeah. Sarah feels the only chance both of them had was to take each other, which obviously all of us have talked about.
Yeah.
Nick feels they also had a level of likability to them that kept them around, which is true.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, they're both very likable people. Very fun to watch as well. Like, very good personalities, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Stephanie tells Michelle that the only reason Peyton wanted to keep her is because both of them were convinced they would beat her, aside from the fact that she would have won against them, especially with their horrible jury management.
I love how she just says that. She's like, yeah, they were horrible. They had terrible jury management. Like, it was great.
Mark feels their games are still very much viewed as an entity, and they need to help them differentiate it.
Yeah, I mean, he's not wrong. Like, there's a lot of similarities.
There is, but I feel like the most clear cut that is different is that, yes, they both lied, but I feel like you got Edmund, who's more manipulative, and you got Peyton, who was more honest.
Yeah.
Like, that's the two different, like, difference I see in their gameplays, because at least for Edmund, he uses manipulation to his benefits, and for Peyton, like, in my eyes, which I probably would have done, is like, oh, Ani's, like, people like honesty. If I'm honest to them, they'll, be by my side.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like he's also lied, where that overshadowed his honesty. So the jury doesn't know which is true or which is real. So that was my intake on that.
Yeah, definitely both very like messy games, but I think that Edmund's was slightly less messy, just based on that alone.
Mm-hmm. Nick says he saw Peyton as the face and made the decisions, while Eddie did most of the social work.
I'd agree with that for the most part.
Yeah, I can see that.
I could disagree. I feel like now knowing these arguments are true, well, been knowing that they've been true, I feel like they both had this hand-in-hand thing with each vote. They both never really had like a clear understanding who to vote. Like the Final Four when Michelle went, like or even the Final Five, you got Edmund telling everyone Peyton has an idol. You got Peyton telling everyone, let's vote Edmund. Like, whether it's planned or not, they still like never really had a concrete plan on who to actually vote for, because I don't know if there's a voting chart. I don't know if there is or not, but I don't know. But like,
yeah,
that should show like how close they were when it comes to like actually making plans and stuff. But
they had different agendas too, for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Which we'll get into, I'm sure.
Mark brings up how because Peyton was his roommate, he felt he was often like a third, and they would talk game in front of him.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff says he wants to ask Peyton and Edmund what the other did wrong to help show why the other's game is worse.
Which I'm pretty sure is the question he does ask, but we'll get into that, of course.
Jake brings up how Eddie made a huge effort to make sure he was good with him, while Peyton never did.
Mm-hmm.
True. And then Sarah brings up how Peyton told her he was going to play an idol on her when he was obviously not, and found that to be one of many unnecessary lies.
Yeah, that I don't know why he said that. That was a very interesting
that was
thing to lie about.
They all agree Eddie did a better job strategically talking about the Duckies, while Peyton wanted nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
And then Peyton, however, was a bit more adaptable than Edmund.
I disagree with that. I think Eddie was like way more adaptable. I feel like Peyton was like very much like, especially when it comes to like the Duckies, like Eddie was more like pretending he was in that alliance and like trying to still go with them. Peyton was like, no, that's not a thing. I'm not with them.
That's very true, though.
I would not.
Peyton, however, was a bit more adaptable than Edmund. Yeah. And Nicole brings up how adaptability is a key component of winning Ascendance, which is true.
And really any game, I'd say. That's very important.
Yeah. Erica feels Peyton struggled with this because of how paranoid he was the round Jeff went and tried to make her do things she wouldn't do.
Yeah, and that's true. And that's really all we get when it comes to the round table. Like I said, very long segment, a lot to really get into. Yeah. And at this point, like, very unclear who the jury is voting for. Very unclear. Right? Like, it seems like some people are heading this way, some people are heading a different way. It really does come down to the speeches here, which we'll just get right into it. So Edmund gives the opening speech, and he talks about how though he's won before, he didn't know really anyone beforehand except Peyton, Mark, and Stephanie, but he realized early on he wanted to ride with Jake and Sarah. He eventually pulled in Erica and Michelle, formed the Duckies. He said he just needed to get the job done, and though him and Peyton had a final two from the start, there was a lot he didn't do with him. He brings up how when Jake and Sarah weren't on the same page, he knew he had to go for them and stuck with Erica and Michelle. He didn't have to rely on powers and just played a strong social game. And for me, that alone is like, yeah, Edmund definitely played the better game in that regard. I mean, I think there's a lot of things that Edmund was able to do that a lot of players weren't. And a lot of that is, be able to make all of these connections that he didn't have prior. Whereas you look at Peyton's game, which we'll get into in a little bit, very much had a lot of built-in connections and relied on quite a few of them. Yeah, some he had to kind of stray away from because he couldn't work with everyone. But I think that alone to me shows why Edmund played the stronger game. But Peyton, we see focuses a lot more on his personal game. And he talks about going in, everyone wanted to work with him. He knew he had to pick and choose who he really wanted to work with. He connected mostly with Destiny, Stephanie, Mark, and Eddie and prioritized them. But he tried to make sure to not promise anyone that he would vote for them aside from Destiny, who he apparently was never voting for. And he really emphasizes this a lot. Like, I was never going to vote for Destiny. Destiny was my number one. And I'm like, okay, but Destiny was also the first juror. So it's really interesting to hear that. But then you also think about how Destiny, oh, she was the second juror. She's the second juror. Yeah. Destiny was the second juror.
Jeff was correct. First.
Which was kind of
what?
I don't know why he had to emphasize that because, Destiny is literally one of 9 jurors.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not saying he wasn't I'm not saying he's not kissing ass or anything, but you're talking to not just Destiny.
What is that?
It's my
I have no idea.
But what I'm saying is it was kind of okay, cool. Why are you saying this? Destiny's only one person. It's not like she can change the whole jury's perspective.
Yeah. And I feel like she knew that. That's the thing. I don't think this was necessarily new information to her. But basically he kept everyone else at an arm's length, and he took information from them and he brought it to his allies. Once he knew Destiny was going, he just had to play for himself, which is what he did. He admits that he lied, but is proud of how he did end up playing, and he feels that his name not being an option, knowing where all the powers and idols were, and just generally played a well-rounded game. I think this was a pretty good speech, but I do think, like I said, Eddie, his game already was a lot more impressive overall. And I think as we get into the answers, I think Eddie just answered a lot of these questions a lot better. But basically, we start off with Destiny. She asked them how their existing relationships impacted their gameplay and how it really helped and hurt their game. But also helped because of, and basically Edmund says that they helped because he was able to scurry around and knew what to do, but also helped because of Payne's connections, which coasted him through pre-jury. And he initially planned to go for Mark or Stephanie at the beginning of the merge, but he knew he couldn't go against Sarah because of his loyalty. And he knew that she wouldn't get rid of Stephanie. So he knew Peyton was his ride or die for Destiny. So he knew that she would be a problem. And that's a big reason as to why Destiny ended up going, which makes sense. Cause that round I remember was pretty crazy. It was Destiny's going, no, Stephanie's going, no, Michelle's going. And Eddie was kind of the deciding vote there for who ended up going. But Peyton says that he had a feeling he would know half the cast, which he felt put a target on his back because of preconceived notions, which caused him to not be honest with his friends. He tried to not let his preconceived ideas of people get in the way of his game, and the people he didn't know actually ended up helping him the most, which that's impressive. But again, I think just the fact that Eddie didn't have those connections and was able to kind of like build off of them, some of them even stronger than Peyton. I think for me, that definitely makes it just a tad more impressive overall.
Jeff asks them to differentiate their games and what the other did wrong. Eddie feels Peyton wasn't devious with what he was doing, and he wouldn't have made it as far without the idol. And Peyton feels Eddie relied on other connections.
I do think he's right about the idol, because there were definitely times where like we were trying to go for Peyton and they didn't because he had the idol. So I do think he's right about that. I don't know about the Eddie one though. I don't feel like Eddie relied too much on those connections. I feel like he made good of those connections throughout most of the game. So I would disagree on that part. So yeah.
And then Michelle asks how many final twos they all made and which were genuine. Eddie says the one with him and Sarah was the most genuine, and then when they were all talking about the pool, he liked her. And Jacob and Erica, but they just weren't on the same page at all, while Michelle and Erica were. The only real one were Peyton and Sarah, while the final three was him, Jacob, and Sarah, or Michelle and Erica. And Peyton brings up how he and Destiny never made a final two, but wanted to go to the end with her no matter what. He did tell Michelle he wanted to go to the end with her, but also told Erica just in case. Stephanie and Eddie, he didn't count because they were a 4 or 5 when they started talking about it. And the solidified groups were made on night 1 and right before the double eviction. The main 3 was Eddie and Erica.
Yeah, I think it was a very interesting answer. I mean, there's a lot of groups that that Peyton talks about here. I think again, Eddie had a really good answer when he talks about Sarah, and I think that's something that Sarah like really needed to hear, because remember coming out of it, like Sarah wasn't sure if that was like a genuine bond or not, and I'm glad that Eddie really owned up to the fact that I wanted to work with Sarah. Unfortunately, I just didn't have the votes to save her, so I'm glad that that's something that he does emphasize a lot.
What I liked about Edmund's answers were the fact that he acknowledged each jury and what he did wrong and what he could have done, or basically made them feel involved. And I think that's what you should do, whether regardless of the live game or an org, is that make sure that you acknowledge the jury, making it look like they're involved with the game, within your game, or even just acknowledging them as a whole, because that would not make them feel less of a player. They're not bitter. I mean, going into that final two, I'm like, I think this jury is going to be hella bitter because of their jury management. But now, like, looking at it, like, Edmund did better than Peyton when it comes to answering these jury questions. And you can tell these Edmund and Peyton were very, like, you can see, like, they were shaking. They were nervous as hell.
Yeah, definitely. And I think especially the idea of like making the jury feel like they're a part of your story and not just like kind of like cogs in the system that you voted out. I think that's also very important. And I think that's something that Eddie recognized very well here. He definitely had that foresight to like recognize that like the jury needs to be a part of my journey. They're not just like people I voted out. Whereas I feel like Peyton focused a little too much on himself and not what role the jury played in like his overall game. Aside from Destiny, of course. So Sarah tells them that they don't really respect all they did as players, and while she respects lying, not really to the extent that they did, she asks them if they were proud of everything that they did, and Peyton says no to every single move he made, but overall he will be happy with how he played. That's kind of all he says. I was kind of like, okay, I mean, what don't you respect? But Edmund says that the same thing, but not getting into the atmosphere like this. It's spurring because he's usually someone who leads with his heart and he likes genuine connection. So when he's forced to be deceptive, it takes over, and he's not really proud of how he acted, but proud of his game because he was working for everyone and never felt like he was in danger. He knew when notes were getting swapped and knew what to say to who, and felt at the end of the day he is here for a reason. Once again, I think Eddie definitely gives the better answer here. It's a lot more detailed. He goes a lot more into like what he respects, what he did well. Hello. I think overall he just yeah, I think Michael Davis is not on the jury, but yes. I think overall he again just did a better job with that. Peyton was just a little too brief for my liking. As a juror, I would have been like, I need more. I need you to elaborate a bit, and he didn't do that.
Yeah.
So Mark then asks if they ever felt like they talked down to anyone, and Edmund says that while he tried to be as kind as he can, basically, you know, when things are said behind his back, he can get a bit deceptive. And again, like Sean said, I like that he admitted this. I like the fact that he took accountability, the fact that, like, yeah, sometimes I can get a little heated and I apologize for that. And he thinks that the only person he got super pointed with was really Peyton because of how he was talking to him and didn't appreciate it, but doesn't feel he ever did it with malicious intent. And Peyton then brings up how sassy and dramatic he is, and that's just who he is, but doesn't feel that he said things that were degrading or hurtful. But if he ever did, it's because of the heat of the game. But he isn't disappointed because he doesn't feel he ever crossed the line anyway. And again, I think Eddie just does a better job of being like, I'm sorry for doing that, while Payne's like, that's how I am and I don't apologize for it. That's kind of what it felt like to me. And I think that
also like Edmund's tone of voice really helped him in this scenario.
Oh yeah.
Peyton obviously is someone who is very outspoken. You know, I wouldn't say he's aggressive, but like he's really out there, and like, you know, his tone of voice is just like, I'm not sorry, like, you know, this is who I am. While Edmund is like kind of enclosed, like, you know, you kind of want to get to know him before you actually know who he is as a person. Like that's why, like, I feel like his tone of voice really helped him when it comes to that jury questioning. Because
I would agree. So Jake feels that both of them. Oh, what'd you say?
I said if he matched the same energy as Peyton, I feel like from there it's a toss-up.
Yeah, definitely. Edmund was definitely more like subdued and kind of like in the moment, whereas Peyton, I feel like, still was acting like he was playing the game, and there was kind of hard to like differentiate, you know? So Jake feels that both of them were a bit excessive with how they handled certain situations and asks if they feel the same. And Eddie feels the reason that he was hard about it was because of how genuine he was working with him and Sarah, and that he didn't care about the power. So he assumed that Sarah had already told him. So he didn't think it would have gotten to him, though he does feel he was a bit manipulative. And again, I'm glad he addressed this, because I think this was something that even we were confused about. We're like, why is he being so adamant about the fact that like he has Jake if he's going to potentially vote Jake out here? And I like that he admitted that, like, I wanted to work with you, similar to Sarah. Like, he really wanted to get to the end with Jake. The votes just weren't there, and there wasn't much he could have done at the end of the day. So I think that's something else that, again, I think he just did a really good job with here. But Peyton tells him that he was never a part of his end game, which this was really bad. I like that he was honest here, but like, this is really bad to say. He's like, he focused on himself, but once he starts a game, it's very hard to switch his gears and play truthfully. So it was very easy for him to write his name down. Not something you should say to a juror, I don't think. I don't think you should say you were never a part of my end game, and there was nothing you could do to adjust that. Like, I don't think that's something that you should say. But yeah. But Nick feels that a lot of their lies weren't necessary and asks what percentage of their lies were crucial to their game. And this was very interesting to me. Edmund says 80%, while Peyton says like 45%. And I'm just kind of like, okay. I mean, they both lied like a good amount, and I feel like it's interesting that like Edmund feels like most of his lies were crucial, while Peyton's kind of like, yeah, most of my lies weren't that important. I'm like, again, I don't think Peyton answered a lot of these questions very, very well here. But yeah, I thought that was interesting overall.
It was very, that was interesting for sure.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Erica asks how much time with her was genuine and how much of it was game. Eddie says in game he focused on himself, but anytime he opened up to anyone about personal things, it was genuine. Peyton says he was genuine on a level with everyone, but in games you are going to lie to people, and he says there isn't one person in the cast he doesn't like, and it's easy for him to be genuine with them. Aside from Jeff, but they still manage to have conversations sometimes, but he was never going to manipulate someone in a devious way. But he feels there are times to be genuine and times to be fun, and he had a good balance of both.
I think this was one of Peyton's better answers. I do. I think he answered this pretty well, and Jeff seemed to understand what he was talking about because Jeff was kind of like nodding his head in agreement. So I think this was like, while I don't think Peyton answered a lot of these questions well, I think this was probably one of his better answers. But once again, I think Eddie still answered this pretty well.
I feel like it was more of like just a genuine answer.
Yeah, definitely. It was not as brief and like cut dry as like some of the others were.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But then we get probably the most interesting of the questions from Stephanie here.
Stephanie is the last to go and calls out Peyton for not knowing about her power. Yep. She brings up how they wouldn't take her to the end because they know she'd win over them, but wonders why they didn't work as hard on jury management if they were so worried about that. Peyton says he didn't clock her jury management skills until Final Four and was clouded by their relationship and not wanting to vote for her, but knew he had to do what he needed to do and not what he wanted, and he knew at that point it was too late to change what he was doing and knew she was the best so he couldn't take her. And then Eddie brings up how he tried to have everything covered at all times, but his best jury management was with Jake, Michelle, and Stephanie, and he felt in a Final Three with Stephanie Peyton. So Stephanie Peyton would still take him. He does ramble a lot, but it worked because everything he wanted to happen is what happened, and usually when he and Peyton split up, it worked in his favor. He admits his management wasn't the best, but he had to do what he needed to in order to win this game.
Yeah, the other thing I do want to bring up is that even when Stephanie like calls out Peyton, he doesn't really admit that. Like, he doesn't admit that, like, yeah, I didn't know about your power. And I think that could have potentially gotten her vote if he would have just like owned up to it. And he doesn't really do that. So I think that's something that definitely hurt him in the end, especially what Stephanie says when she votes for him, which we'll bring up. But we then get to the closing speeches here. Peyton apologizes if he didn't own up to everything and that there was a lot that happened in the past 3 days and it's hard to decipher, but he tried his best and wasn't trying to bullshit anyone. And he talks about how towards the end game, he felt both would take him, but still felt that Stephanie would beat him. So he flipped his vote and he tried to play in a way that was true to himself and not in a way that would be demoralizing. And though he lied and did a few things that he would change, he feels he ultimately deserves to win and that they should vote how their heart really does desire. And again, that's as brief as most of his answers were. But Eddie thanks everyone for the opportunity to get to play again. And he wanted to try a live game for the first time to see how he would do, which is something we have not touched upon. Eddie has not played a live game before, which I thought was really interesting to hear about. He is not, I think we knew that, but like he brings that up a few more times here and like really like emphasizes that, which I feel is quite important and makes his game that much more impressive. But he has a real passion for this game. And because of that, sometimes his mind does leave his heart, and he was manipulative because he knew he had to sit at the final at the end, but didn't feel that he or Peyton would get there, and he wants to win because he feels he had something to prove, while Peyton wants to win because he wants to get the win that he deserved the first time. To be honest, I think Eddie did a better job of pitching why Peyton should win than Peyton did here. Basically, he did things in this game and that they know what he did, but knew at any moment his game could in fact crumble down. When he became captain, it was probably the best thing for his game socially, and he didn't have that anxiety in his head because of almost all the powers aside from Stephanie's. but everything else he knew about. And I like that he admitted that he didn't know about Stephanie's power here. He didn't try to bullshit her. He had a blast and thinks it has been amazing for the first time, and he can't wait to talk to them more after this. Everything personally was real, and he knew he had to do what he did because he's the only winner here, but he busted his ass in hopes that they all respect his game and promises them a beer pong tournament. Just a great speech all around. Like, can I just say that this was a really strong speech, I think, from Edmund at the end. He not only, I think, did a good job of, again, doing what you said, Sean, and really make every juror feel like they had a place in his story, but also just really emphasizes how much he enjoyed playing the game. I think he did a really good job with that. Like, he wasn't, he wasn't trying to bullshit anyone. He owned up to the fact that his game wasn't perfect at times. And I think just in general, like, this is the kind of final speech like I'd want to hear at the end. Like, for me, there have been plenty of games that I've played where, like, I see a final two and I'm not sure who to vote for, and there's something that wins me over. And in this situation, like, if I'm on this jury and I'm still, like, unsure about Peyton or Eddie, like, this is what would win me over. It's just this final speech alone. I think he really killed it here. And I think for me, I think that alone is what gave him the win. I think he really killed this closing speech.
Oh, yeah.
So, we then get this moment with Papa where he gives a bit of a speech and thanks all of them for playing and how much work they all put into this for 18 months. He thanks them for sticking with them and that it proves that they could do it. Nicole talks about how they handpicked because they only wanted people that they could trust, especially with how much risk is involved, and that they did exactly what they hoped for and should all be proud of themselves. And I mean, the hard work definitely paid off. Like, this, I think for a first season of a live game, this ran very well. I think they did a really great job. And just in general, Papa and Nicole should be very proud of themselves. And I don't just say this because in the beginning of the episode, they did show our podcast. Like, generally, they did a really great job, put a lot of effort into this game. I think especially, like I said, for a first season of a live game, which is very different. Obviously, I've never ran one myself, but very different from an org. There's a lot more you have to put into it. There's a lot more you have to think about. Everything ran very smoothly, and I think just in general, they should be very proud of themselves.
They did such a great job. Like, just for being like the first season of their live game, I thought they just did amazing and just did a wonderful job.
Yeah, definitely. So we then get to the final vote in which it takes 5 to win. And this was a very interesting vote.
Such a close vote.
Yeah, very, very close vote, which I mean, I do think that's deserving. I think in general, like, even though I don't think Peyton necessarily gave the best answers, I think his game alone, like, does definitely show he has the tools to win. And I think he definitely did deserve a good amount of votes at the end. But we see Jeff votes for Eddie. Destiny votes for Peyton. Nick votes for Peyton. Mark votes for Eddie. Sarah votes for Peyton. Erica votes for Eddie. Jake votes for Eddie. Michelle votes for Peyton. And Stephanie does vote for Edmund, with probably the most iconic line of the episode for me, where she's like, well, you didn't try to bullshit me about my power, so you end up getting the win. I thought that was great. And the vote does come down to a 5-4 vote, and Edmund is now the winner of Ascendance Live, a 2-time winner. Amazing, just all around. The fact that this guy won again, even though he went in and most people knew that he won the game, like, come on, that alone should give him the win. I know, Mike, you brought that up like a bunch of times as well, that's a big point of contention for why he should win. So I think in general, I mean, he really killed it here, especially in terms of, like I said, his answers and the fact that he did own his game in the end. I think he did a really good job with that. And he talks about how much he cares about the game, and he thanks everyone and didn't think that he'd be able to do this again. He says he's proud of winning again, especially with so few connections. And we get this really good line at the end where he's like, he tells Jabbar that he's coming for his crown. I loved that. I thought those were great.
I love that so much.
Great final line to end the season on. How do we feel about Edmund as a winner?
I'm proud. I mean, like, Edmund's the second 2-time winner. Like, that's why he said, Jabbar, I'm coming for your crown, because Jabbar is the first ever 2-time winner of Ascendance.
Yep.
The Ascendance community. And then Edmund's the second one. So I'm really proud of Edmund. I think he really showed up in his gameplay. You see the growth in his gameplay. I do apologize. My mom is talking in the background if you hear her.
I figured,
like, his gameplay was phenomenal. And yeah, he has like a few ups and downs. It wasn't a bumpy ride. It wasn't a smooth ride to get to the end, but like he did what he had to do. He managed to get the majority of the jury to vote for him. He answered these questions pretty well. He represented season 2, which I personally was at the bottom of my totem list. Like season 2 was by far the most boring season ever, being part of production at the time. Like no offense to Aly, but like literally there was no game talk in season 2 until like the end game. But to see him progress from season 2 being a winner to him being the winner of Ascendance Live, like he showed so much when it comes to his gameplay for Ascendance alone. So I'm really proud. I'm proud of Peyton too. I mean, like Peyton.
Oh yeah,
just made history. I mean, he's the only person. Actually, never mind. He did not make history, but he is one of. I think he's the second person. No, he did make history. Okay, he's the first person to get second place twice.
Woo!
Okay.
I thought Tulsi got,
which is a good statistic. Like not many people can do that.
That's great.
Yeah,
I will say
that.
That is something he should be proud of. He still got to the end twice. No, he didn't win, but I do feel Peyton's win is coming for sure. It's definitely coming.
Oh, yeah.
And I like what Peyton says at the end here that like while he doesn't necessarily know what he's doing wrong and deserves to win, he does admit that like maybe he was a little too cocky, but I think that's true. I think that ultimately is what got him to lose the game. I think it was a little too cocky. I think a little too confident in his game, a little too convinced that like the jury was voting for him and that his game was better. You kind of have to go in like hoping that the jury respects your game, but always having that doubt that like maybe there's something that isn't clicking as well with them. I think that's something that Eddie did well, and I don't think that's something that Peyton did quite as well. And I like that he did admit that in the end. And he talks about how he's proud of how he did regardless and just has to roll the punches. And look, we've been dunking on Peyton's answers a lot here, but it does not take away from the fact that like Peyton played a phenomenal game and definitely, I think, did some really great stuff in this game. The fact that he very much did play for himself and he had that idol and he really was never in a position where he needed to play it. I think that alone is very impressive. You know, what he did with the pendant and things like that, I thought was really good. There were multiple times in this game where I thought Peyton is really like overplaying his hand. I think he's going to go soon, and it didn't happen. I think what he was able to do with Edmund, even if they weren't always on the same page, the way he was able to just kind of stick with him, and they did get to the end together. I think that's something that Peyton did do a really good job with. I think there were definitely some moves from him that I was very impressed by. I think especially what really showcase, Payne's game is touchy subjects when they talked about how he was running the game. And I don't think the edit did an amazing job of showcasing that at first. But I think once we got past that point, we really did start to see how Peyton and Eddie were very much equally running things. And I think if Peyton had answered things a little bit better, I think there's a scenario where he could have ended up winning. I do. I just think, again, Edmund just took a bit more ownership for his moves than Peyton did. And I think that's why Peyton ultimately didn't win. So Peyton, I don't know if you're watching this right now, but like if I had to give any tips for like what you should do in the end, I would just say own your game a little bit more. That's what I would say. I think if you own your game a little bit more and just, admit that there were some, like, just own up to the fact that, like, some things weren't perfect. You weren't always honest with people and things like that. I think that, and he did do that. Like, I don't want to say he didn't do that because he did, but I just think Edmund did a better job at admitting, like, yeah, maybe I went a little too hard with this. Maybe I was a little too devious and I apologize for that. I just didn't really get that from Payne here. And I think that's why that's what ultimately cost him the win. But what do you guys think about Peyton's game?
I mean, I thought he definitely played a very strong game, but he made a very snaky game. And basically, I'm just going to echo what you said. He just needs to own it more and just not be as cocky. But I mean, go in there confident, but not too cocky. Like, just basically just explain what you did, explain your moves, that kind of thing. But I still think he played very well. He's a very good player. And Edmund did amazing. Obviously 2-time winner, so he deserves it for sure. And like he's like way more soft spoken, and then Peyton's more outspoken. So it's just like, but yeah, definitely. Some of the things that Edmund said were a little bit more genuine, just based on his voice. But I mean,
definitely,
Peyton still did.
Tone is very important, as we said.
Oh yeah, but They
And
both played great, and I just
Yeah, they
enjoyed
did.
watching both. I enjoyed watching both of them this season.
Yeah, they both played really strong games for sure. And yeah, now normally this would be the time where we cut to some interviews, but obviously, you know, it's been a little while since this wrapped up. We are going to try to get some people like after our season coverage if we can. I think there's a possibility we could get at least Stephanie, because I know Stephanie has been watching a lot, and I think she definitely
we could probably get Peyton as well when he's not working.
Yeah.
But like, if we can get anyone, we'll just do like a special interview episode. But if not,
I'd love to get all of them, but like, I just don't know if it's gonna happen.
Yeah, I mean,
can we also talk about like they didn't hire any edits? I hope this does not get copyrighted. Mom, can you lower that?
Right foot now, left foot.
But no, what I'm trying to say is that like Matthew and Nicole did not hire any professional editors, and if you watch the credits, like the editors are themselves. Like Nicole had a hand in it, Matthew had a hand in it, Erica had a hand in it, Dylan, like basically all production, like they did this themselves. They did not have any professional people help them, and it's a learning curve for them. So I'm really proud of production, really proud of Matthew Papa and Nicole, because obviously, like, as someone who started Ascendance, I was supposed to play season 1 of the org, and then Nicole was like, do you want to be part of prod? So I was like, hell yeah. So like watching them and helping them plan the season 1 org, and then having it, they're hosting their 10th season already. So look out for that. The cast might be out soon. I don't know when they start, but can't wait for season 10 to come out.
Yes.
To hosting their first ever live. Like I don't have any words to explain how, because I already said in our chat like how proud I am, but like it's like it's just crazy to think that like you can. This is gonna sound so cliche, but when it comes to like our reality TV shows, you can be on them. I mean, like it's. So I'm excited to see what they have for season 2. I'm also gonna plug in, like, if you aren't already following the Facebook page, go follow the Facebook page, because sometimes they do Ascendance minis. They're really fun. Shout out to Michelle. I got to sub in. Yeah, shout out to us in the chaos, really the messy side of Ascendance. They do fundraising minis, fundraising games, fundraising just group events. That's what I like about the Ascendance community, only because they're not just welcoming towards the alumni. Like, we would bring in other people, just get together, play a game, murder mystery or something like that, book clubs, just normal family events that you usually do with families. So like this isn't just I would say it's not just an org or a live game. It's literally like behind it, like once you play Ascendance, you're part of the family. They would treat you like family. So that's the perks of being part of the Ascendance community. The fact that I said Ascendance community, the fact that I turned Ascendance into a community instead of just Ascendance, it says a lot. Because honestly, like
I would agree. Like I think
if you're
that
behind the door, you can see how truly like welcoming Matthew and Nicole are. They're very vocal with what they want. I mean, I applied for Ascendance Live. I've also been asked to help out. Like, I offered to help out for production for Ascendance Live. So, like, the fact that, anyways, that's what I'm gonna say, because obviously I have distractions behind me.
Yeah. No, I want to definitely echo all of that. I think just the fact that they were able to do all of this mainly just on their own, not have a lot of outside help, especially when it comes to editing. Like, that's not easy to do, especially with
No,
what they're
not at
doing,
all.
having to edit episodes every single week, figuring out how to edit them, how to structure them, things like that. All of that shit's like really hard. So I really do give them a lot of props for doing it on their own. And yeah, I mean, definitely there's things that can be improved upon, you know, audio issues, things like that. But like that's gonna happen with live games.
It was the first season too, so it's like it's definitely gonna get better as like seasons go on.
Oh yeah, exactly. That's definitely something that can be improved upon, and I'm sure once it goes on, it'll get even better. And like you said, with the community, like it's crazy how while this is just an org that is a subsidiary of a larger org community, Ascendance has had enough seasons and enough people to where it has kind of established its own community. And it's amazing that
it's so good.
They've been able to do that. I think the fact that they were even able to make this a thing, I think it's just incredible. And I'm very excited to see where it does go moving forward. I don't know when 2 is going to be happening. I'm assuming it's going to be around the same time as this first one, and they're going to focus more on like the regular org, but I guess we'll just have to see. But either way, it was a lot of fun to cover this first season. I think that for a first season, this was really good, especially in terms of a cast. I think that the gameplay really got great. It was a little, I will admit, in the beginning was a little slow, wasn't as into it, but once I think we started to focus more on the gameplay and showing the more strategic side of everyone, I think that's when the season really took off. And for me, it never really let up from, like, it never really got to a point where I think it let up. I think that the momentum was always, in a very high. I think that I was always into the gameplay. All of that was just really interesting to me. So I think overall, just a really strong first season. But before we do wrap things up here, Sean, I do think we have one last draft update. It's been a while.
We finally have it.
Yes.
We finally have it. Okay, let's see if this works. Is my screen sharing? Yes, it is.
Yes.
Okay, so obviously there's numbers here finally. I did not update the photo because that's just so much blacking out to do. So I did all the numbers. The only thing I did not include as far as points is getting picked for co-captain. I feel like there's no point of doing a point for that. So at the end of the day,
wow, I did so well.
Kevin did bad. Kevin came in last with 52 points.
Oh, come on. This is a golf scores. Come on.
And then I honestly thought, like, while doing this, I thought Aly was going to win it.
Yeah.
But then calculating the scores, Aly came in third with 97. And then Mike in the chat thought he had won. Because Edmund did win, and he did choose Edmund as a draft. So I thought that too. I was like, oh yeah, Mike won. I'm not gonna do a draft. I was like, you know what? Let me curious. Let me actually tally up these points and see who actually won. No offense, Mike. And doing that, like, I ended up winning. I think only because majority of my picks, Erica, Jake, Peyton, and Nicholas all ended up in the jury, so that gave me a higher point average.
Makes
when
sense.
it came to that. So that's probably the reason why I won. And Peyton being second helped a lot, and then I ended up winning by 1 point against Mike with 101. So it was really fun. I won something that's part of Ascendance. Yay, cool. But
I think it's very fitting. It's very fitting that the person that runs the draft, that knows the most about Ascendance, is the person that ultimately ends up taking the win here. So yeah, be proud. Sean did in fact win the draft, and but before we do close things out here, this is our chance to give your last few outros. Plug what you want to, all that fun stuff. So Sean, go right ahead.
You can follow me on Instagram at Sean_Dairo. I don't use Twitter that often anymore. Yes, if you want to follow me on Twitter, that's my Twitter. I don't use it that often. But what else? Shout out to Duke, Lost at Sea. Go listen to his podcast. unlike us, he's actually updated and has interviewed every single person in the game. So that's all there. If you want to listen to their perspective, Stephanie, Peyton, and Edmund's perspective of their gameplay, watch Duke's podcast. What else? If you want Ascendance merch, you can get Ascendance merch. Just follow them on Facebook. All things Ascendance. What else? Yeah, stay tuned for season 10.
Play the game before it plays you.
Yeah, play the game before the game plays you. Exactly.
Always. Always.
I feel like I'm missing something. Oh yeah, if you're in Virginia Beach, can't wait for it. If you're in Virginia Beach around October, come to Hunt Club Farms and get scared in October. I know it's so far away, but yeah.
Yes. Hey, some people might want to get scared in January, you know.
Well, there is haunts that do run on all season, so maybe
all right. Yes. I don't know if Mike is around right now.
I think Mike fell asleep.
I think he fell asleep.
I think he fell asleep.
I think he did. But you can follow him at WonderPuff16. Always enjoy what he contributes on this podcast. So definitely really do appreciate that. And yeah, all the insight he's had all season, you know, that's always something that we appreciate. And yeah, definitely follow him over there. Are we plugging a meeting with Mally as well? Because I think it's the last episode.
Yeah, we need to finish. Yeah, we've been kind of like taking our time, but we still need to finish the Dancing with the Stars finale and then the last little bit of Masked Singer stuff. But that's coming soon. And stay tuned for more conversation with Kely for like the next few reality shows or off-season.
When are we doing the org podcast?
Off-season stuff. Oh yeah.
We meant to do that like when we met up and we just didn't.
We kind of forgot. But I mean that can just be anytime when we're just like bored.
Yeah, it's
I mean it's not like it's a big deal if it's like right away.
It's not. But, we'll get it done.
We're also gonna be more consistent with the next reality shows. We're probably just gonna start doing it like right after we watch.
Yeah.
And we were thinking like we said before, we're only gonna do like guests every few episodes.
Every once in a while, yeah.
Not as crazy and like not as hectic trying to get people and everything because everyone's got busy schedules. So
yeah, and once again. Yeah, and once again, like a big reason we're doing that is because like we really like overbooked for our like Survivor one, and we couldn't get like half of the people we wanted to. So what I think we're probably just gonna do is like we'll just reach out to people if we want them to potentially be on, and we'll see
if they reach out.
Yeah, that's always a possibility too. So we'll figure it out.
This has been so much fun covering the first season of Ascendance Live.
Yes.
And obviously, shout out to Matthew, Papa, and Nicole.
Yes.
Always amazing.
Of course.
And then shout out to the whole cast.
Yes.
And the crew.
Yes, all around, really great stuff. But other than that, that's it for, I think, our coverage of Ascendance Live. For now, like I said, we might try to get some exit interviews done if we can. We'll have to see who is available. If they're up to do it, we'll have to see. But that's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll see you guys in our next video, and we will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.